Greetings and felicitations.
Hip hip hurrah, tally-ho.
Hey, Cutie Pie.
Hey, Puddin'.
And we're going to start off by discussing the cover article that's found in the September 22nd to 28th issue, 2001 of TV Guide. This is the Canadian edition. And the cover title is Star Trek The First Generation. Scott Bakula takes the helm of Enterprise. And what I liked about this article is it actually gives credit to Enterprise being here because of Star Trek superfan Bjo Trimble.
It was nice that the writer mentioned her. And it says, just in case you don't know, she was the one who started the writing campaign that saved the original series, and thereby saving Star Trek, because they never would have had enough episodes to go in syndication if the show hadn't gone on one more season.
And if there wasn't such a popularity in syndication, I mean, that's when we jumped on when we were kids.
Right.
There wouldn't be Next Generation, and so on and so forth. So all of this Star Trek is thanks to her and her husband in this massive campaign that they produced. So we got to meet Bjo some years ago at a convention, and she still has a passion for Star Trek.
It's amazing. She still does cons with her husband, and they still talk about fandom and those are early years. It's great meeting them.
This article goes on to say that many of Enterprise's first season will be filled with a Back to the Future approach. For instance, during the first half of the seasons, fans will witness the horrible results in an early attempt at using the transporter on humans. And we're going to see trial and error experiments. And that's what's going to be unique about this show, as opposed to the picture-perfect technology that we see later on in Star Trek. But that instance, though, we did see in Star Trek The Motion Picture.
Yeah, it's not like we haven't seen that before. But in the motion picture, they were fixing the transporter. It's not like they were still trying to develop the technology. But yeah, on Enterprise, which I do think is more realistic for the time on Enterprise, that they were afraid to transport people. I mean, it was for inanimate objects, not for people.
Yes.
And everyone was too scared, even though they eventually did start using it more and more for people, especially in emergency situations.
Yes. I like this. It says, if the original series was referred to as wagon trains to the scars, Scott Bakula says that Enterprise might be likened to the Wild Wild West.
Because it was more gung-ho?
Yeah, more raw. This was true exploration on the elementary level. They had no idea what was going on. And so, when we go into this series thinking about that, and I've said it before, as a precursor to the NASA space exploration, the show is much more enjoyable. And it also mentions that the show is not called Star Trek Enterprise, but Enterprise, and that is by design. They're hoping that science fiction fans will jump on and not have to worry about what happened beforehand. And when you think about it, you really couldn't jump into Deep Space Nine. You had to know what was going on beforehand. Voyager made a lot of throwback references to previous Trek, whereas this, you could start into it with no understanding or minimal understanding of the Star Trek universe and still enjoy it.
Well, that's an interesting thought, that you don't really have to know any of the Star Trek history. I mean, it does refer to some things that the fans already knew, like Andorians and Vulcans. And it refers to the movie First Contact. But I do see what Berman was trying to say here. They're trying to make it accessible to new fans. And really they had that in mind for all the shows, but they were trying a new approach with this one.
And this was a time that there was no streaming. The DVDs weren't accessible to everyone. So he made the point of, we have 35 years of Star Trek. It's kind of hard for people to absorb all that in. So this was designed to be a springboard for new fans to jump on.
Oh, another thing, he said that or it might have been the writer that said this was going to be destined to last 7 years. But it didn't, but they didn't know that.
That's wild that they really did plan for it for 7 years, though.
Yes.
We see early on that was part of the plan.
Yeah, because the previous shows had gone on 7 years.
Fight or Flight. Originally aired October 3rd, 2001. Written by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga. Directed by Alan Croker.
This one was a Hoshi episode mostly.
Which I think is fantastic. Very excited that right on the onset we have an ensemble cast that I'm caring about. Not years later, not just tell me about the captain and one other person, but I actually feel like this cast is cohesive.
And the producers actually said, even they were surprised that they picked this one to be the first episode after the pilot, one that focuses on one of the other characters instead of the main three for the show.
So the premise of the episode, Captain Archer sees a derelict ship. He wants to go on, see what happened to the ship. Along the way, we're finding out that Hoshi has reservations of even being part of this voyage. So I like that. She's saying, wait, we're only one episode in? I want to get out of here.
Yeah, she was scared. I mean, she was a little scared in the pilot, but then when you get to this one, when it comes right down to it, like now the captain has ordered her to do something, to go off the ship, to be part of an away team, which they didn't call it that, but yeah, but to beam to this derelict ship, and she was really scared. And you can understand it. I mean, maybe that's why they did this episode first, to show how, this was still early in space travel time. And people were scared to find new things. They wanted to, but you just don't know what's going to happen out there. And yes, it is very scary to see something you've never seen before and to not know what's going to happen.
I think it made total sense because you have a character that she was pressured into being on this mission. She was assuming that she would be primarily doing onboard system translations, analysis, what have you. And now she's on a landing party dealing with dead bodies and gross things. And she was not prepared for this at all.
Yeah, going out on a ship is one thing. The ship became familiar. She had her cabin there where she lived. But so to leave that and go to an alien ship was totally different. And, and she could even say that that's not what she signed up for, since she did picture herself being mostly on the ship and staying on the bridge and just doing linguistics from there. And so another interesting dynamic was that the fact that Archer wanted to send a team over there to that ship, and T'Pol was like, no, Vulcans wouldn't do that.
Exactly.
Like she expected humans to follow their standards, their customs, but this was Starfleet. They followed different rules, and well, even at this time, they didn't really have anything established as far as should we go over there? They couldn't tell that there was anything alive over there. And it goes to Archer being an explorer. He wanted to find out what was there. And they said in the beginning of this episode, they were looking for a planet. They were hoping to find, a planet that's occupied. And so now they find a ship and they're kind of disappointed, like, oh, this is what we have. I mean, we wanted to go to a planet and meet new people, but They found the ship first, and Archer said, well, we need to see what's there. He was curious. He was there for exploration, so he, in some ways, he did get what he wanted because, even though it wasn't the exciting thing like a planet he wanted, but he did want to see what was there.
Now, I think this is a perfect opening episode after the pilot, and the reason being is because we want to see early forms of Federation exploration. So we got the characters out of the way in the pilot episode. We understood who they are, the basic premise of their background, who they were, what they wanted to do, or in Hoshi's case, didn't want to do. By this point, right off the bat, we have to boldly go where no one has gone before. And Captain Archer's taking that very seriously. He sees something he needs to explore. It's within him. The curiosity gets the better of him. So I love that they're starting out the show strong like this.
And they do mention that they've never been to this part of space before, because Mayweather said he's been, he grew up on a ship that was a freighter ship, but he said he only made first contact a few times in 23 years. But then Archer said, well, but your ship never went out this far. Because Enterprise was in, new territory. Because it was a Warp 5 ship, they were able to travel farther in less time. So, and then when they do get to the ship and find out that it has all these dead bodies, and Hoshi again reacting like the green crewman that she was, and started screaming. I mean, she was basically speaking for the audience, because a lot of people would react that way.
I would.
Yeah.
I ain't playing games with this. Mm-mm.
And it's no wonder that made her want to go home. I mean, she's like, I'm going to ask Archer to take me back to Earth. And Dr. Phlox was trying to talk her out of it. But of course, Phlox was a doctor. I mean, he's used to seeing, dead bodies. So.
Well, you mentioned Phlox. I love the scenes with Hoshi and Phlox. How she had this little pet worm.
That was cute.
Yeah.
And something about how we wanted to explore new life, and the first thing we found was a worm.
Again, bringing it back to reality. Space exploration. We're viewing this as a sequel to modern-day space exploration. We just got sound from Mars. This is when we as humans go to other planets. Our first contact that we're seeing are rocks, minerals. Hopefully down the road it's going to be flora. Maybe it'll be some microorganisms. I mean, that's the reality of space exploration, is not all of it is first contact. So I think they're doing a great job with bringing space exploration reality to this show, and then trekking it up a little bit.
Yeah, showing how you're not always going to find something that you're expecting, and showing how scary it is, and then learning how to deal with it. Archer was learning. Well, I mean, we find out how he is, that he wanted to do this, even though he didn't have to. Like, Starfleet wouldn't have cared if he just left and didn't stay and explore the ship.
And also how they're just bored out of their mind being on the ship constantly. I mean, Captain Archer was looking for something to do, to the point where he was analyzing the floorboards in his cabin of little squeaks.
Yeah.
And Malcolm Reed, he wanted to do some heavy-duty target practice. I mean, it makes sense.
You can imagine that the ship, that it's probably, even like at Warp 5, it's probably a long time going from planet to planet, at least days in between going from one planet to the next. So during those days, they have to find something to do.
Now, when they come back from this ship, they're realizing that, wait a second, these alien beings that are dead and they're hooked up to this system, someone's going to be coming for them, and they did. Another race of aliens closes in on the Enterprise.
And this was something T'Pol warned them about in this episode, like, so somebody did this to them and they'll probably be back. And so she gave a logical warning and a logical reason why they should leave, but Archer still said, we still need to find out what this is, and if these aliens are in trouble with predators, maybe we can help them.
Now, I think this is great because it's the contrast. This is so different than Voyager. Remember, this aired right after Voyager got off the air. Voyager deviated from the original series so much, whereas this was reeling back into the original series. Man wanting to explore, and also a super logical Vulcan saying, you better watch out.
And that's something the show gets into a lot, is the contrast of human exploration and Vulcans who have already seen a lot and suppress their emotions, so they're not as excited about seeing this. Even though, as we said, it's a necessary presence that T'Pol is there, because she does kind of need to have them settle down at times and to give them the warnings. But even with the warnings, so that made them aware that, they still could be in danger. So they just need to be careful.
And this calls upon Hoshis Skills to call on the innocent alien vessels, that we'll call them. I don't think we got names from any of these aliens. Is that correct?
I don't think we did.
So the innocent alien vessel, the one that it was the same species as the one that were dead, Hoshi was desperately trying to communicate, and it shows how, look, these universal translators don't always work. She has to go on her abilities, communications, to talk to them. I mean, this was a shining light for Hoshi. She was feeling down upon herself for not being able to go on the ship, but she was able to redeem herself. It just shows that not everyone is good at every single thing. If you specialize in an area, well, that's where you're needed. And Captain Archer reinforced that to her.
A good confidence builder for her. She was trying to use the equipment, the universal translator, and Archer told her to just talk to them, just step in front of the view screen and talk to them in their language. And she was so scared, but she had to. And I love how Archer had that confidence in her. He knew that she could do it. He knew that she's the best at her job. And of course she said that too, she knows that that's why he wanted her there, but she still didn't feel like she was cut out for this.
He handpicked her. He did not handpick everyone on the ship.
Yes, that's right. He wanted her there, and he knew that she could do this.
Yeah, I thought this episode was fantastic for that. Early on character development, and we're seeing kind of a bookend with regards to they break away from this ship, the tractor beam. Of course, everything is all said and done, happy-go-lucky. They find another planet where this little space slug can live on, and Ensign Sato puts the slug on the planet and says, don't worry, you'll adapt just like I have. So it was kind of showing that, okay, the slug was taken out of its home, but will learn to adapt. She was taken out of her comfort zone, but she's able to adapt.
It was great having that B story.
Yes.
I mean, both stories involved Sato a lot. And so, but having her with the slug and just something that was a lot like her, being away from home and having to adjust to something else. And she could see that. She kind of related to it.
Totally. And when we look at this episode, was there anything that really tied into the rest of the Star Trek series that we could say? The only thing I saw was more in-depth understanding of communications and the communications department. Lieutenant Uhura, we didn't see much of her on screen on the original series, but this just adds layers to what communications experts do. We know that the books and the comics build on it more so, but we're seeing it on screen now for the first time. Because remember, by the time Next Generation came along, there was no more need for communications.
Right. They didn't have a communications officer anymore.
So these are the building blocks for what we see Lieutenant Uhura would be doing on the Enterprise. Whether we saw it or not, we know she had those capabilities by the time the original series came along.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and join our Facebook group. Live long, and may the Force be with you. Nanu Nanu.